And now for something completely different. Today we're working with Integrative Week number 7. It's our week 37 on our 50 weeks course. We have learned a lot. And today we are connecting breathing with nutrition. You see, breathing and nutrition, that's the energy acquisition plane. You remember our Vitruvian man that served as an inspiration for our protocol of health from Leonardo da Vinci. And this plane is energy acquisition, nutrition and breathing. And this is the most vital, the biggest sources of energy for our body. Look, let's start with a little example. And this example, number one, this is physical movement. How can we optimize physical movement? By having a synergistic aspect of connecting nutrition and breathing. So how do we give this synergy and how it works on the physical movement? You see, there's two things. If you look here, so we have something called ghrelin and leptin, and those are hormones that we really want to normalize the balance between, just with other hormones in our body. That's the integrative concept of health. And ghrelin and leptin, that's a hormone of satiety and hormone of hunger. Okay? So when we are on ketogenic nutrition, on low-carb nutrition, when we go through different levels of adaptation, we normalize the balance between those hormones. So we don't feel hunger as much as we used to when we are on low-fat, high-carb diet. And what happens is we use less time during our day with peristaltic movements, which means that we don't use so much time on gut movement, on breakdown on all of the nutrients of our body. And when we have more time free from gut movements, from digestion, we can actually move much better. So we use our energy on the movement much better. The respiratory burden is much less on the movement, okay? Our physical resilience is better. What happens with our breathing? Look, when we work with optimization of breathing, what we do, we make diminish breathing. That's one of our patterns of breathing optimization. What happens is we can do much better diminished breathing when we don't have peristaltic movements. Our diaphragm can use much more freely, and we can normalize the level of the two main gases in our lungs, and that's carbon dioxide and oxygen. And when we do that, when we go hypercapnic, means higher carbon dioxide, we release much more oxygen from hemoglobin. Remember Bohr effect, the father of Niels Bohr, Christian Bohr? And this is about affinity of hemoglobin molecule with oxygen molecule. We talked about that a lot. Remember, this is a very strong effects of synergy, of connecting nutrition optimization and breathing optimization. So what's happening is you can also much better tolerate hypercapnia and hypoxia, which means, you remember, the breathing is regulated in much higher extent by carbon dioxide. So we are much more sensitive to high level of carbon dioxide, to changes in carbon dioxide in the blood through our chemoreceptor in the bloodstream. And that means when we are ketogenic, the use of we're something called respiratory quotient. And respiratory quotient is how much do we expel carbon dioxide related to how much do we breathe in oxygen. Okay, and when we go totally on carb, it's a 1. When we work totally on shift to burning fats, it's about 7. When we are, when we are keto adapted, it's about 0.7, and when we are keto adapted, it's about 0.8. And it means that we are tolerate hypercapnic state. It means that as athlete, or as a normal, just a normal human being, you don't feel as much need to expel carbon dioxide, because simply there's less carbon dioxide made related to the normal high carb, low fat nutrition. Okay, so we call it respiratory drive. It's less. Okay, the next thing we can talk about, it's fat oxidation rate. You see, fat oxidation rate is much bigger when you are keto adapted. In normal athletes, high performance athletes that are on a high carb diet, the fat oxidation rates can vary from 20 gram per hour to 70 gram per hour to 60 gram per hour as a max. For athletes that are keto adapted, that went through long-term ketogenic adaptation, the fat oxidation rates can be from 70 to stunning 110 grams per hour. It means you can really use your fat stores, your energy stores, and this gives a lot of resilience, physical resilience. Okay, now let's stop for a second with the synergistic aspects and go and look at this picture, because you see what we talked about right now, that was about correlation between optimization of nutrition and breathing and how it affects the physical movement or the physical resilience. Remember, we have also immune resilience and mental resilience. We call it a resilience triangle. And this picture I just use in order to show you what happens on cellular level when we connect nutrition and breathing. And this is a very strong point, because you see what we have here. We have our tissue, and I just showed you a muscle. And it's not only muscle tissue we have connective tissue, we have organs, internal organs, we have bones, bone tissue, we have blood, we have lymph, different kind of tissue. And all of those tissues, they have something in common. And this, if we take the magnifier glass and we look at the tissue, whatever tissue it is, we have something called extracellular matrix. And extracellular matrix, that's the matrix that connect different cells in your body together. So it hang together, and the extracellular matrix also provide the cells with nutrition, micronutrients, antioxidants, vitamins, whatever. With breathing, there's oxygenation on the cellular level into the mitochondria. These are small cells. Those organelles inside the cells are mitochondria. And that's where the real breathing happens, the real oxygenation. They also provide this extracellular matrix for detoxification and for the flow, vascular flow. Okay? There's something we call ECF. It's called extracellular fluid. Okay? And we have a lot of this. We have like 15 liters of extracellular fluid in our body. It's like a fourth of our body weight. Okay? Now, if we go further, we look here. That's signaling. Signaling between cells. It's a very, very crucial thing that has to work. Okay? and that's how the cells of the whole body, they connect with our control organ, with our control room. That's the brain. And then we have something called structure. And the structure, that's the robustness, that's the resilience of the whole cellular structure, tissue structure, how the cells connect together. And look, we just talked about physical aspects, synergistic aspects of nutrition and breathing. And you see, nutrition, it's how the nutrition comes into the cell. You see, it's all over the place. The breathing, that's oxygenation. The detoxification and flow, that's a very, very strong thing, because detoxification, we have cellular membranes. We have also the membranes in the mitochondria. And we need to provide healthy fats. We need to diminish inflammation rates, chronic inflammation in the membranes, because when we do that, we also ensure the better rates of oxygenation through the membrane and through the other membrane for nutrition, so they can go through the membrane in much, much better rate. Also detoxification. Okay? All of those things are connected together. Now we're going to talk a little bit about signaling, how it works. And the structure also. Look, the next aspect we're going to talk about. And look, all of those aspects, I just want you to understand that I want you just to be aware about synergistic effect of connecting nutrition and breathing. Just to be aware about that. If you want to have more information, just click on the links on our week 37, and I provide you with all the sources for the science. Okay, there's a lot of science about this, and it's very, very interesting. So the next one is we're talking about tissue regeneration. And tissue regeneration is very, very crucial after the physical exercise. It could be also wound and different kinds of problems we have on the skin or the fibers and everything. In all this situation, we need collagen. And collagen, I just have to say that you see the tissue, we have what is the extracellular a matrix for the muscle, for example. That's the fibers. That's something we call ground substance gel. Okay, same with the organs. With the bones, we have collagen fibers, and we have bone mineral substance. In blood, we have actually blood plasma, and the blood plasma and the lymph are interconnected. So there's like 3 at least different kinds of extracellular matrix. So what we need with the tissue, with the muscle, we need collagen. And collagen is a very crucial fiber. It's a protein. It's about a quarter of all our body protein. So we really need collagen. And when we are on ketogenic diet, we eat some bone broth, and it supplies us with a lot of very, very good quality collagen, which is readily absorbable into our body cells. And what we really need to uptake collagen, to optimize uptake of collagen, we need high rates of cellular oxygenation. You see, very big effect of nutrition and breathing on tissue regeneration. And then we go to chronic inflammation markers. You see, after exercise, we really need inflammation to repair wounds, to repair some tissues, but we don't want chronic inflammation. And because chronic inflammation, it's a very strong correlation to lifestyle disease. So what are the markers of chronic inflammation? All the markers of chronic inflammation, they go down on a low carb, high fat diet, provided that you eat a lot of very good omega-3 foods, and so the balance with omega-6 is normalized in favor of omega-3. So it's the fat imbalance is a very big problem. So when we balance our fat normally, we reduce chronic inflammation. So the level of glucose goes down. We restore insulin sensitivity. That's the nutrition part of it. When we talk about breathing, we reduce oxidative stress when we normalize breathing. Okay? We reduce the formation of advanced glycation end products. We reduce formation of reactive oxygen species. We need reactive oxygen species actually, but we have to balance their level. When we have a lot of glucose in the body, we have bad oxygenation, we have a lot of reactive oxygen species, we have a lot of free radicals, and all of those things, they promote chronic inflammation. They also lead to cancer proliferation. We're going to talk about that later. So the next one we take, that's the metabolic toxicity. And you see, all of those things we are talking about is exactly about normalization of the work of extracellular metrics. Doesn't matter what tissue we're talking about. Is it a bone? Is it the internal organs? Our blood or muscle? Doesn't matter. When we normalize breathing, when we normalize nutrition, we normalize the way our body functions on the different levels, okay? On the extracellular metrics. So metabolic toxicity, it's about detoxification. It's about flow. You see, we talked about chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is actually about the membranes of the cells, the membranes and mitochondria. It's the rate of taking out the toxins out of the cellular space. And that's about also enabling autophagy. Remember, we used autophagy that's, we have three kinds of autophagy. Macroautophagy, microautophagy, and the chaperone-mediated autophagy. We talked about that, the connection with the sleep, with your ability to go down into the third and fourth stages of sleep, deep sleep. We also talked about how it's connected with diminishing the nutritional window. Remember, so the earlier you have the last food intake during the night, the shorter the nutritional window you have, the better you sleep. The lower level of peristaltic movements during the day. When the peristaltic stops, what happens? Autophagy starts. Okay? That's the metabolic cleansing pathway. That's the detoxification. That's the better flow. So metabolic toxicity works with fasting, and it works with enabling lymph flow. And why lymph flow and breathing? Well, because when we do breathing with our 5-stage rocket, remember what we start with? We start with structured movement. And then on top of the structured movement, we can relax our antagonist muscles. And when we relax our antagonist muscles, provided the peristaltic doesn't work anymore, we can do the physical movement, and then when we do the physical movement, all of our pumps, lymph pumps, starts working normally. Okay? Just starting from here, goes up, and then taking over by a diaphragmatic pump. So that's how we normalize metabolic, the detoxification, the metabolic toxicity. Okay? Immune resilience, sleep, cellular recovery from exercise, everything works this way. So if we go up, then we can talk about brain blood flow. And why is it interesting? Because there's some studies, actually a couple of studies that show when you are ketogenic, when you go through a ketogenic adaptation, you increase cerebral blood flow by 40%. Wow! That's both detoxification, breathing, nutrition, on the level of your brain. That's the command central for the whole body. And how do we connect it with breathing? Well, you normalize levels, when you optimize levels of CO2, carbon dioxide, when you optimize level of nitric oxide, what happens is these two are very potent vasodilators. You remember vasodilators? That the hormones actually that communicate directly with smooth muscles of the arteria, dilating smooth muscles. So what we do, the oxygenation on the cellular level in the brain starts working much better. That's a very strong synergistic aspect of signaling too. And so the next one, we go to when all of those things are working together normally, we actually we stop cancer proliferation. All of us, we bear cancer cells. We have different population of cancer cells inside of our body, but our immunity keeps a lid over the proliferation of these cancer communities. And remember, we had a week of about the modern health system, and we found out that there was used trillions of dollars on cancer research, and it didn't lead to any good results actually, because the cancer rates are twice as big the last 50 than the 50 years ago. So the risk of incident of cancer during our lifetime is doubled now, because before it was between 15 and 20%, now it's between 40 and 50%. So what we need to take over our responsibility for our immunity. And how do we do that? We minimize the risk of cancer proliferation. How do we do that? We stop the dominance or the rate of anaerobic glycolysis. And what is that? That's when you have high levels of glucose, when you eat high carb, low fat diet, you have high levels of glucose, low insulin sensitivity. And cancer cells, which are opportunistic organisms, we actually give them a possibility, the opportunity to take over and proliferate on and thrive on anaerobic glycolysis. Why anaerobic? Because in the same time, our breathing is impaired, okay? When the breathing is impaired, we have something called hypoxia-inducible factors, 1 and 2. And that's some pathways that when we have low oxygenation on the cellular level, that lead to angiogenesis. And angiogenesis, that's the way cancer proliferates. That's the biggest factor of metastasis. Wow! It means that we can actually stop cancer by optimizing nutrition and breathing. This is a very strong synergetic effect. And then we are talking about sensitivity. We just mentioned the insulin. You see, there is a term called diabesity, and that's because diabetes and obesity are usually connected together because you stop using the fat in your adipose tissue. Okay? So what about nutrition? That's because when we are diabetic, the insulin is high. Insulin sensitivity is very bad, and insulin is inhibitor of lipolysis. And lipolysis is fat breakdown, fat oxidation. So we diminish fat oxidation rate to nothing, okay? Maybe 2 to 3 grams per hour, when we actually can use oxidation rates 50 times bigger, up to 100, 110 grams per hour. So when insulin sensitivity is restored, glucose level are normal, we are not inhibiting lipolysis. We start break down fats. We are not obese anymore, and we stop diabetes. So how do we get the synergistic effect from combining this with breathing? Well, because there's a studies, and you can see links here on the page, that are linking hypoxic states on the cellular level with hypoxia-induced factor with diabetes. So when we diminish this factor, we reverse diabetes. This is a great thing. It gives you a possibility to actually when you are aware about all those things. Again, you diminish inflammation. You start using fat breakdown to give energy to all these organelles inside the cells, our mitochondria, our batteries, our power engines in our cells. And that's about nutrition. That's also about breathing. You see? So extracellular matrix it's not degenerating anymore. It's recuperating all of the time. So you keep your extracellular matrix in good shape, both in your blood, both in your bones, or internal organs, and muscle tissue, connective tissue. Okay? So next one, we connect it with another kind of insensitivity. That's the insensitivity to neurotransmitters. And we have we have 100 neurotransmitters. They let our cells communicate with each other. And that's signaling here. And what's happening when we are on high carb, low fat diet, and we're eating bad fats, we're creating a lot of inflammation in our body with this diet. Our sensitivity to those neurotransmitters, it goes down. And with the time, we become deficient to these neurotransmitters. And we start taking pills, maybe if we are have some mental issues like depression, and we have borderline syndrome, or we might have mania depressive or things like that. We start taking SSRI or SNRI medicine. And it's called serotonin reuptake inhibitor, or norepinephrine or adrenaline reuptake inhibitor. Those neurotransmitters. There are 3 of the major neurotransmitters together with dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. But this is to work with symptoms. We don't work with symptoms. We work with causes to the disease. And we want to restore our natural survivability, our natural resilience. So what we do, when we do low carb, high fat with a lot of fats, we actually stop cravings for carbohydrates. And carbohydrates, the high carbohydrates, that actually what trigger the process called reuptake of serotonin, reuptake of dopamine, these neurotransmitters, when they spike a lot, okay? And then the reuptake is maybe too much, and then we go low on those neurotransmitters, and we get depressed. There's a lot of things, angst, it's promoting a lot of mental disorders. And you see, when we start using normal nutrition, when we stop chronic hyperventilation, that also triggers all those states in the body, we stop accidental firing of neurons. We normalize the way our brain works. And we normalize neurotransmitter sensitivity. And we have no deficiency of dopamine, serotonin, or norepinephrine. It's normalized. So, you see, I think we got through everything here. And so, this is a very, very short overview over the energy acquisition plane. And that's how we connect nutrition and breathing. And what optimization of this is great work. We can do it throughout all of our life to extend physical range of movement, physical resilience, immune resilience, and mental resilience. And that's what we need to be happy. Now we have been through all the aspects, and they are not at all there's other aspects of connection between nutrition and breathing. This is just to have your awareness on the most crucial aspects of this. If you have any questions, look at the links to the science about all of this, and if you have questions, just write down there on our page. Look, you just have to remember that extracellular matrix, that's the structure, how nutrition, breathing, detoxification, signaling, and the structure, the robustness of our body, of muscles, connective tissue, organs, bones, blood, and lymph, connects everything together in order for us to have strong physical resilience, immunity, and mental resilience. Okay? And how do we get energy for all of this? That's energy acquisition plane. Normalizing of nutrition and normalizing of breathing.